of course, to see what's happening.
One of the tools that we provided.
Yeah, the American convoy, I think it's going to be huge. Truck, yeah, I think it's going to be huge. Huge. That's what I think. UN planes, yes. There was 2 planes. That was up in, I think it was North Bay or Thunder Bay. North Bay or Thunder. I think it was North Bay. That's the those officers that you saw in green with the that were fully armed. Those were the UN officers. Their planes were spotted. It's all over the internet now. You can take a look. Two of their planes were touchdown. That's where they kind of kept it there. So, yep, for sure. C. Wow. 139.99. C. Thank you so much. Thanks for braving the cold and opening our eyes. Sean and Tracy. Wow. Thank you so much for that. C. Thank you so much for that. Not necessary. Very much appreciated. Thank you, Sean and Tracy. That's very generous. Thank you so much for that. Thank you. Thank you. That'll go towards obviously the next stay where I'm going to go. I don't know if it's going to be here in Ottawa or wherever the convoy is going or whatever's popping up. Of course, it doesn't have to be a convoy. Wherever the people are going to be in support of freedom, and if we have to get down there to get eyes and ears on the ground, we will definitely do that for you. And thanks, C. Sean and Tracy, cheers. Thank you so much for that. Cheers. Thank you so much for that. Senzo, thank you. There's convoys started in the U.S., but most are hesitant, not sure if there's a different motive. What do you think? Love from New York. Yeah, it's. I mean, it could be a different motive, but I think generally it's all about the same. I think it's you know, the mandates. Get rid of the mandates. I kind of think it's along the lines. They have this maybe the same agenda, same kind of plan, but maybe. Yeah, as laws are different in every different state, but you can imagine it's all for the same thing. It is freedom. It is absolutely freedom that they're fighting for sure. John, thanks so much. Can't use weapons on us if they're in Ukraine. That's right. Send the PSYOP guys as well. John, thank you. Thank you for that. Cowboys March. Can horse it up. Horse hit up Kevin for slow mode. It is actually in slow mode, actually. It is actually in slow mode. Marsh, yes. We are in slow mode, as we always are. Yep. Cheers. Oh, right, yeah, I definitely want to come over there to the convoy. That'd be awesome footage to get down there if I can. Maybe I'll have to see if I can get down there. Yeah. Rebel without a coat, thank you. Just made a song about truckers, Canadian truckers. Nothing. To F with. Search. Rebel without a coat on Bandcamp to hear. Thanks for your work. Thanks so much for that. That's awesome. Definitely have to check out that song. So far, the biggest convoy in Canada is in Winnipeg. Okay. That's where my brother. I just came from there too. About a month ago, my brother was there. Come over, come cover our USA convoy, brother. Yes, don't tread on me. I know. That'd be awesome there for sure. Jake Jackson, cheers. Thank you so much for that. Some support tokens for you, Daddy. Thank you.
This is shameful.
Thank you for that. Yep.
Shameful.
So I think, like I said, they're meeting here tomorrow. Yeah, biggest convoy in Winnipeg. Yeah.
They may not have money.
Meeting here tomorrow. Probably, maybe like 11:30 or so. We'll check it out. We'll come and check it out. See the crowd here tomorrow before I head back. Thanks for that, Brian. Thanks, Brian. Appreciate that. 5,100 in the chat. Like, share, subscribe. That's amazing, guys. Thank you so much. Yes, Matt. Amazing. Yep. Diva, thank you so much for that. No one cares. You make money. The fact is, it's the fact that you address zero comments, questions and concerns unless someone is paying you. Super chat. The other super chat should, because of the question, like. So I guess the thing is, obviously they do take priority when the super chats come in. I definitely do read those out, and then am scanning through the tablet. Like if you can look, when I'm going through the tablet, the chat is just flying. I can't possibly read all of the comments. It's impossible, right? But yeah, so that does happen. But appreciate that. Thank you so much for that. Yep. Yep.
They are extremists who do not
Stay frosty, everyone. Canada strong. Coffee. Thank you so much for that, Chris.
It's a small group that must.
Thank you so much for that, Chris.
We have to make a decision in terms of leaders, in terms of country. You don't need to tolerate these people. Mr. Speaker, that is repugnant. And I have sat here and listened to liberal member after one saying we need to de-escalate, we need to bring down the heat. We'll start by talking to the Prime Minister.
People are going to go till here.
Also, it was no doubt.
Where do you, Pressia, how you doing?
Minister's strategy to
yes, that's right. Yep. No, that's true. Yep, I do shout out. Yep.
Then he decided to
yep, thanks so much. Yep, don't tread on me. Yep. There's so many comments, it's impossible to, it's just wherever I scroll, my eye just picks out a comment. Obviously, I try to read as many as I can, yeah.
They braved the Delta variant. They braved the Omicron variant. And they...
Oh, really? Okay, oh, wow. I didn't see that, yeah. Mr. Wonderful, cheers.
All we've asked, all the media...
Oh, trolls can super chat, absolutely. They can say they have the right to say whatever they want. 100%. 100% they can do that.
Yep. So we have cost thousands of Canadians their livelihood for purely...
Regularly change...
disgusting.
Oh, the speaker during a given session. That's a good question. I'm not too sure.
He simply asked for a plan. Just a plan. To end the mandate, will Prime Minister remain defiant, refusing
does answer many, yeah. Thank you, Brian. Yep, I do answer as many as I can.
Will the rest of the world
no worries, brother. Hey, guys, you gotta stick with college first. College, get your education first, of course. That's more important. Actually, got to save up what you can for sure, right?
Oh, we got switched our legs.
This Prime Minister has chosen politics over science.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I've answered multiple comments. That's right. You guys are.
This crisis could have been avoided with strong, compassionate.
Matthew Waters, big ups, USA truckers will be boot China. Joe, nice. Kathy Waters, thank you so much for that. Yeah. Yeah, I know you guys got the same kind of issue with, of course, Mr. Biden there.
Canadians from across the
lovely leader you guys have. Oh, you're referring to Parliament? Yes, scam. Yeah. Referring to Parliament? Yeah. I know they each get. Obviously, they each get a time frame where they can talk, but if you ask me, it's just a lot of dancing around questions and nobody's really answering. Dancing around the answers, nobody's even really answering the question properly, especially Trudeau. The rest of them aren't so bad, but Trudeau's horrible at answering questions, absolutely. Deva, thank you so much for that. Find out about hazard pay. Cops make $4K a night for this occupation. Find out if you can, if this includes hazard pay or not. These are very vital questions because hell of a lot. Yeah, I'm gonna find out about that. Yeah, I wonder if that's I did hear something about that. That's pretty crazy if that's true though. But yeah, I definitely have to see about that. All right, about the voting systems. 215's been on. I see that there. Yeah. Yep. Christy Castile, thank you so much for that. Christy, cheers. Thank you so much for that.
National in scope, and third, that the public disorder could not be resolved by other means. Let's review these criteria one by one.
SRK, how you doing? Thank you so much for that. This is for all the losers. Giving Jeff a hard time. Jeff is out there on the cold streets for weeks now, so you can enjoy the stream from the comfort of your home. Be thankful and send a super chat. Thank you so much. Of course, it's not necessary, and thank you so much, guys. But I appreciate that, SR. Kim, thank you so much for that. Cheers.
Massive disorganized people. Some of them
thanks so much.
Views, including the overthrow of the government. But there is no actual intelligence that I have seen or any evidence that there was actually the ability to threaten our government. I walked through there for 3 weeks.
Never used the large system. Yeah, that would be crazy to use the large system, right?
All MPs to walk through these protests, and there was an imminent threat to our government. This is the most malfeasance that a security or a government has ever
They're playing the national anthem in that vehicle that just went by. Yeah, that's right. At least they didn't. Hello, Ronnie, says Cowboys Wash. Cheers. Ronnie in the building.
Why is this not often in voting.
Duffer Spirit, thank you so much. Says keep it up. Thanks for that super sticker. Thank you so much for that.
It's clear. It's
Duffer
done.
Spirit, cheers.
The other thing is that it cannot be resolved by other legislation. Clearly, it could and it has been, both at the Ambassador Bridge and otherwise. It is
Crowds
true.
will go tomorrow,
It is
Brando. That's a
true
very good question.
that It would be helpful.
I think there'll be a fair bit of people here, and then wherever else might be scheduled to happen. Who knows, right? But we'll have to see. Cowboys Mosh.
Ultimately,
Jeff has Instagram, Twitter, amongst other social media. Yep, TikTok, Twitter, Facebook,
Do we want a
all that
country
stuff.
that is
Twitter I don't
free
really
to
use
dissent?
too much.
Because a government that controls
Me personally, although I do have it, but
do we
I think Kevin's on my Twitter when we were scheduling posts before. But, you know.
Do we want a country where Quebecers can share their
the crew chief, big ups, buddy. I saw that's funny.
for the government? Because I believe all of these.
That's funny. Oh my god. Thanks. Thanks, guys. Let's see how
questions and comments.
Shizer and
member for Vancouver Granville.
rest of the chit chat with some people here.
And I
See
thank
what's going on.
the member opposite for his impassioned speech. I have to admit, I'm struck by much of what he said. And in the spirit of thinking through fact, he mentioned that many people were
Shizer's talking. Ordelia, Gemini Lee.
Hi, Dad.
How you doing? Yeah.
Come down here. It's not scary.
Exactly. Oh, freedom dance, absolutely. Awesome.
No, but seriously, we need people. Empowering people. Nothing scary about this. We're not being rebels. This is our right.
That's right.
Richard
And if you
Fadden,
don't
who
realize
said that
I'm
the
scared right
government
now, right? This is
was
not
in
a
a
joke.
position to, and that it was appropriate
scarier than
to
everybody
invoke the
thinks.
Emergencies Act, particularly as it related to the federal banking measures, which were not covered under other legislation.
Diminishing if we don't stand for our freedom.
The scarier thing is that we're
Be
not
kind
even
and
scared
generous
we
and
should
just
be.
say that the individual misheard. I clearly said 2, and if you check the record, you will.
Look at the
And
numbers
if you
for
want to
that,
watch
too.
the
You guys are
video, it's
putting us at
available.
risk
So
now.
that's just watch
Where's
it.
all the
It's
people
on
that started
film.
this foundation?
There's
Where's
2
the
individuals, including one
real
lady who's
package?
in a scooter
Where's
walker
anybody?
who gets trampled by
And
two
if they're not,
down
okay, I get
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Someone tell us something.
Let me
Yeah,
tell you,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
going to hurt a whole lot. And that
Yeah, that's right.
So you can shake your head all you want.
Wow,
Look at
that's
it.
a long way up.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm
Secondly,
okay,
I
I'm
went through it blow by blow by
Yeah.
blow.
But the fact
There
that
is
I
not a
can't
national security
Wonderful, yeah.
that cannot be resolved.
Yeah, I saw that on Convention Road. Yeah, he was there. Spencer, thank you so much for that. Spencer, cheers.
I just want to remind
Like a hydra, we will only grow. More heads of freedom is ringing everywhere now. People won't take this anymore. Thanks for another day of freedom, Jeff. Spencer, cheers, buddy. Thanks for tuning in there. And we got Dev again. Thank you so much. And Multi, Super Cowl, thank you so much. And Dev says, Diva says, sorry. Love you for being out there. No, don't get me wrong, so please don't get that confused. Okay, yep. I'd be there if I didn't lose my job from COVID. Thank you so much. No, I thank you, of course, and of course watching and supporting and just getting the news out there. And thank you, Multi Super Callow, Canada from New Hampshire. Live free or die. Our state. Photo. Thank you. Thank you for that. Oh yeah, no white punch to me. I'm Boston. Yeah. Cheers. Portland Andy's Hot Dog Army still in the building. I see you guys there.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry for it must be the end of the day.
Cheers, cheers, cheers. Big up Ronnie in the building. How's your day in Texas today?
I am definitely pro-vaccine. I am proud.
Abby Warner, thank you. So sad you're the only live streamer that I can find. There is a few that were going. I know Ottawa was on earlier. Like I said, Mr. Wonderful just asked me a question there on Convention Road. They have totally blocked off that whole area, and trucks are getting towed. Lots of police down there.
That is not our campaign.
Yeah.
Commentaire, the honourable member for
Mr. Speaker,
Yeah, it's going to be pretty,
I would like
pretty
to
nuts.
thank my colleague for his intervention in the House. I've worked closely.
All the freedoms, the freedoms are at stake. I mean, everything is going to be, everything's going to be digital. They want the digital pass system to be connected to everything, even electric vehicles.
The crisis that is facing Canadians is, how we deal with foreign funding or illegal funding of domestic terrorist groups. And I'm just wondering whether or not he would support urgent legislation being put in place to prevent domestic terrorist groups from being funded.
you know, everything's going to be digital. You know, they want the digital pass system to be connected to.
For her comment, and I've enjoyed working with her in S216. And if I'm not being too bold, enjoyed walking with her to the house earlier. But what I would say is this is an area of study, and it is an area where we need to look at these new technologies. Unfortunately, our government's been behind on many things, including reviewing how cryptocurrency works in our context. We need to look at crowdfunding. We need to review all of these topics.
Continuing debate, the honourable member for Kootenay, Columbia.
Mr. Speaker, the government has cited a public order emergency throughout Canada as their justification to invoke the Emergencies Act. They're wrong. In this chamber, the Prime Minister said he invoked the Emergencies Act because the situation could not be dealt with under any other law in Canada. That is false. The leader of the NDP talks about tools available should the government abuse the power provided within this act. But he's missed a critical point. The abuse has already happened. Neither of them are listening to Canadians and are instead choosing a path of divisive policies, distinctively separate from democracy and the voice of Canadians. Mr. Speaker, the freedom is the heart of democracy, and the right to choose is at the heart of freedom. Let me say that again. The right to choose is at the heart of freedom. And freedom is what so many hundreds of thousands of Canadian women and men have paid the ultimate sacrifice to defend. A Métis man in my riding of Kootenay, Columbia wrote me this week to tell me a story of his father's commitment, his family's commitment to preserving and securing democracy, and his concern about the current government actions. He told me the story of his great-grandfather, who was wounded in the First World War. He holds tightly as a reminder of how he came to be free that very bullet that tore through his great-grandfather's leg. He also told me a story that his grandfather fought in a Canadian 1st Infantry Division that made its way through Italy, Ortona, to stop Hitler's advances to Europe. These are but two examples of hundreds of thousands of Canadians who have sacrificed for our freedom. The very freedoms this government has restricted. Why did the Prime Minister go directly to invoking the Emergency Act? He had numerous opportunities to address the situation peacefully over the past few weeks, and yet chose to do nothing. I can think of 4 reasonable actions that would have allowed us to avoid the difficulties we faced. The Prime Minister could have sent a delegation. The Prime Minister could have sent a Public Safety Minister or the Emergency Preparedness Minister. The Prime Minister could have met with opposition leaders, like the Conservative leader requested. And finally, the Prime Minister could have met and listened to these Canadians himself. And of course, the government could have removed COVID restriction vaccine passports at our border crossings and airports. But we know, Mr. Speaker, that listening, the one thing that would have helped de-escalate, is the very thing you did not do. Having a significant background in law enforcement, the basic rule of law is to listen to the concerns and work towards a peaceful resolution, not to enter into a fight first. I can't imagine if every police officer went to a call and didn't listen to the issues first. Dialogue is significantly more productive than the Emergency Act. Instead, what he decided to do was further ratchet up, escalate, and divide Canadians with hurtful rhetoric. Well, Mr. Speaker, Canadians aren't buying divisive rhetoric. The Prime Minister no longer has footing rooted in democracy, and all members of this House have a simple choice to make. Do you side with freedom of the institutions of democracy, or do you side with the Prime Minister and the leader of the NDP, who want to seize bank accounts of Canadians with whom they disagree? Apparently, accounts have already been frozen, so this sets a precedence that all illegal road, logging sites, pipeline blockades, railroad blockades, the future funding is subject to this process. Back to the Emergency Act, I choose freedom. Let us not be so foolish as to water down the significance of this movement and our obligations to those we serve, and the impacts this will have on generations that follow. The decisions we make in this chamber on this issue will reverberate through the walls of history, and we will be held to account. The choice is simple. Protect and defend democracy or tear it down. I, Mr. Speaker, will be voting to defend it. We must not accept a situation where it's up to a Prime Minister or any member of the government to decide, outside the laws created in this chamber, which protests are legal and which are not. We surely must not tolerate a scenario where families are separated because of their ideas or beliefs and are different than that of the Prime Ministers or the government of the day. Mr. Speaker, Kootenay Columbians see this as being about a Prime Minister's ego, about lack of leadership and weakening precedents. Mr. Speaker, through you, I'd like to take this moment to speak to those members of the Liberal caucus who are feeling uneasy about being whipped to a vote they know to be wrong. Your country needs you to uphold the values of democracy and freedom. Our country will be strong and free long after we leave this place, and it is our responsibility to ensure it is so. The Emergency Act was not invoked during the fears and protests around the Spanish flu that took 50 million lives around the world. It was not invoked during the Great Depression and the workers' strikes in the 30s. It was not invoked during the crisis of Polka or Ipperwash, and it was not invoked in the aftermath of 9/11. During my time in law enforcement in British Columbia, it was not invoked to solve the riots in Penticton and Kelowna where downtown storefronts were destroyed. And it was not invoked to address a month-long illegal standoff at Gussison Lake, one of the largest in the history of the province. There were RCMP members shot, helicopters taking rifle fire, landowners unable to go home. I was at this event and can say with certainty, it was much like a war zone in British Columbia, Canada. No Emergency Act. And currently there is an illegal blockade and protest at the Coastal GasLink drill site on the Martin Forestry Road near Houston, BC. On February 17th, there was an attack on a number of CGL employees and RCMP, and a member physically injured in the attack. Initial damage to equipment and buildings is estimated over $10 million. RCMP are investigating mischief, assault, criminal harassment, and man-trap set purposely to injure police. Now, this appears to be a violent, illegal action that the Emergency Act would support law enforcement, especially also given the financial support GoFundMe.com has financing from outside Canada. Where the other methods and authorities exist to deal with disagreement, government should use these methods and authorities. Government should not subject free people to abuse of wide-ranging, freedom-altering overreach. I stand before you today on behalf of the people I represent, the thousands of phone calls and emails from individuals concerned about their charter rights and freedom. I stand in this chamber, Mr. Speaker, after a lifetime of experience within the RCMP to explain to the Prime Minister and his colleagues in this House he is wrong in his actions. Police agencies have the tools they need, but it does start with dialogue. The government had numerous other legislative options it could have considered before going to the extreme of invoking the Emergency Act. The Act makes it clear it's only meant to address urgent and critical situations that cannot effectively be dealt with under any other law in Canada. The government wants the public to believe otherwise, but in fact, they do have the power to direct the RCMP under Section 5 of the RCMP Act. The government did nothing for weeks and are now taking unprecedented steps that are not necessary.
Push up for donos. I'd be
being used by the government and what they would like Canadians to believe, the fact remains the Prime Minister's actions represents real limits on our charter rights. Mr. Speaker, civil liberties, the rule of law, democratic norms, these are all principles that require constant vigilance to defend. The measures under the Emergency Act raise serious questions with respect to the rights of Canadians. Section 2 guarantees our freedom of association and assembly. Section 7 guarantees our right to life, liberty, and security of a person. And Section 8 guarantees our protection against unreasonable search and seizure. How and why Canadians be assured this government is protecting our rights with this extraordinarily and unprecedented invoking of the Emergency Act? The following organizations have also now come out publicly against the Prime Minister's overreach: the World Sikh Organization of Canada, BC Civil Liberties Association, the Canadian Constitution Federation. This is in addition to opposition from governments Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, Prince Edward Island, Quebec, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta.
I wrote my name on that thing.
Who wholeheartedly agrees with the Prime Minister and the Liberals, Mr. Speaker? The NDP, that's it. 25 votes in this 338-vote House separate the will of Canadians from democracy. And as much as Canadians learn about the Emergencies Act and the NDP support of it, they are sounding alarm bells. The silent majority is awake. Canadians are watching and will not forget the decision we make in this chamber on this issue. Freedom will prevail on Friday, or it will prevail when this government fails. But make no mistake, freedom will prevail. However, the current leader of the NDP is supporting the Prime Minister at any cost. We arrive
Upper 7.9, baby.
As the direct result of failed leadership by the Prime Minister and his government. Mr. Speaker, I employ all.
Remember when I told you streams might get weird? Yeah. Sometimes they do get kind of weird. But it's just fun and weird.
It will be recorded in history, written in textbooks, and taught in classrooms. This wayward principle has lost control long ago.
Everyone knows what
Opposition to the NDP supported by Liberal overreach is growing. Invoking the Emergency Act is clear government overreach, and the Conservatives will oppose it. I just want to add, I really appreciate the thousands of individuals in Cooney, Columbia who have reached out to me, hoping common sense prevails. It is so difficult to understanding why the federal government, when so many provinces have eliminated most COVID restrictions. For example, I was in Calgary and there was no vaccine passport. So why does the federal government continue with vaccine restrictions and federal regulated locations, border crossings, airports? We would not be here if common sense and following science or provincial partners.
I remember when he came over.
We need Canada united and proud. It is time.
Question and commentaire, questions and comments, the Honourable Member for Halifax.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I haven't had the pleasure of meeting the member yet.
Because you guys were saying bad stuff.
In the House. And I thank him
You
for
guys were
his
saying
invitation
bad
to
stuff and almost got
vote
me
against the
by
motion
a dude.
confirming the declaration of emergency, but I must assure him that I'll be voting in favor of it. And I must also remind him that, in fact, 2/3 of Canadians support it, including 75% of Canadians in his own province of British Columbia, 72% of Canadians in Quebec, in the Atlantic provinces, 65% in Ontario, 57% in Manitoba and Saskatchewan, and 51% in Alberta. In fact, a majority of Canadians in every province.
7.9!
And by the way, 82% of Canadians believe that
I-7s all day.
restrictions lifted them too quickly. 82% of Canadians.
Is that bull laying down in the shoot? Looks like it.
You mentioned you wished that the Prime Minister, one of your actions you could have taken, you wished that he had spoken to the protesters. And I remember a press...
Look at my stick. Oh, I still have that. I made that button
It looked
myself.
like it was a small, confined basement room somewhere.
I won a whole bunch of money that
Prime
day,
Minister to
too.
speak with this group. My question is, why would the Prime Minister of any country empower illegal occupiers with a conversation, and what message would that send to future occupiers? Thank you.
Kootenay, Columbia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yeah, the question I think really is, why didn't the Prime Minister or members of the government go talk? I almost said, go talk to the individuals that were here that were organizing those events and see what they actually were wanted, what they were going to do, rather than sit in here and do nothing. I didn't say whether the Prime Minister. I said that's an option he had, but they also could have sent Public Safety Minister, could have sent the Emergency Minister, could have just opened
The ball get
dialogue.
up. Look at it. Just gotta restart him.
Question et commentaire, l'honorable député de Jonquière.
The Honourable Member for Jonquière. Well, ultimately, I do not want to tease my colleague, but
That was from women. That was from women.
I find it quite surprising that over the last few days we've actually been quite close to the Conservative Party on this matter. And I wonder if they're going to start following the right path, because if I think about women's right to make decisions about their body, if you think about medical assistance in dying or conversion therapy, well, the Conservatives weren't so adamant on the topic of freedoms. So are we seeing a renewal of the spirit among the Conservatives?
Watch out. Absolutely.
Perhaps the NDP is turning to the Conservatives?
All right.
Depends, but on a serious note, I've always been that way for rights and freedom, so that's where I've been. And
What year was that? That was 2017?
Questions and comments, question et commentaire, the Honourable Member for Vancouver East.
Oh, there's no best way. Like down that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the member for his comments. You know, one of the issues that he did not touch on was, of course, the impact of this illegal occupation for the residents. And it took a private citizen to bring the matter to court. And in fact, she also was reported in the media that she was threatened and attacked. So I wonder if the members have any comments for the residents who suffered through all of this, who received threats and harassment.
The whole stream was
what
wild.
his comments are. Do they not have rights, and should their safety not be protected?
The Honourable Member for Kootenay, Columbia.
That's when chat was crazy, bro. You guys come a lot.
It's really up to the police.
Yeah, I'm more mature now. I was just a kid back then. I was just a kid back then.
That they've already talked with the government and they responded as they felt appropriate.
Have I showed the marathon one yet? I don't think so.
Quick question here, if anybody's interested. The honourable member for Brampton South.
Oh, I can't play the. It'll copyright strike the stream, so I can't play it. But if you guys want to see the marathon one, just go to Portland Andy. Go to Google, YouTube search Portland Andy.
When the people's lives have been impacted,
the race runs the race or something like that.
Why he don't think?
I entered into a freaking marathon and I ran it, dude.
The honourable member for Kootenay, Columbia.
I didn't enter it.
I never said it wasn't important. But there's been, for example, just before COVID, we had the railway blockade, Mr. Speaker, where
after 5 accounts you've calmed down a
to our
bit.
economy, and we didn't react to that. So I think when you ask the question of, I do care, and I think we should be doing something, and I do believe we do not need the Emergency Act to keep our streets safe.
I'll just keep you guys...
Reprise du débat continue
Thanks,
avec the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary, l'Honourable Secrétaire parlementaire de la ministre de Santé mentale et des dépendances.
The Windex bottle hype, that was good, right?
Mr. Speaker, I will be sharing my time with my honourable
You've done a lot
colleague
of
of
crazy
Newmarket
stuff.
Aurora.
What shit?
Monsieur le Président, le droit à la manifestation est un droit
Mr. Speaker, the right to protest is a fundamental right in our country.
Check your business.
Rico,
This right has been used
with the 5 bomb via Cash
many
App
times
for
in Canada
beers.
for causes that
I don't got beers, but I got
for causes that have made our
whiskey up there,
society progress.
Give me like
For
2
example,
seconds.
women's rights,
On the ride back to Toronto.
the end of racial segregation, LGBTQ2+ rights, reconciliation with First Nations, Métis and Inuit
Not too
communities.
much going on. There's a little gathering there. But they're going to be back again tomorrow.
But now,
A bigger
we're
gathering.
seeing this right to protest being derailed by far-right populist movements,
Try to go downtown into the...
which is undermining the general interests of the Canadian public order, democracy,
That was not
parliamentary
extremely gay. That was
process,
not. I mean, I'm not even. No, I'm
and
not gay,
elected
so I couldn't
officials'
even
right
been
to
gay.
represent
See?
Canadians.
It wasn't even extremely. It wasn't
This
gay
is
at
very
all.
concerning.
It was 100% heterosexual.
As various media sources have shown from the very beginning of what became an occupation of Parliament Hill,
Thank you so much for that.
conspiracy and hate symbols
No one getting in. Fences
were
everywhere.
unabashedly
Yes.
flown by the protesters
Get
in
la
the
puerta.
downtown area over the last 3 weeks.
I have to go down there anyway.
The use of these symbols reminds us that freedom of expression does not mean that one can spread hate. Yet the people promoting this movement do not seem to have realized that, right up until today. As we speak, downtown Ottawa has been evacuated, but the protesters are moving to new rallying spots. The pandemic has been and is still one of the greatest challenges that many Canadians have ever faced. The challenges have been different for each of us, but the great majority of us have faced the difficulties and have understood the importance of respecting the measures implemented by provincial and federal governments. We are all overwhelmed by this pandemic, which has been going on and on for nearly 2 years. We have all made sacrifices. We have sacrificed for our families, our friends, our communities, and the most vulnerable. Canadians' mental health has been seriously affected by the pandemic, which means that there is an increase in stress, anxiety, overuse of substances, and violence. It is clearly time to be done with this darn virus. But unfortunately, this virus is very stubborn. Last week, the official opposition was talking about Denmark as an example of lifting health restrictions. And yet recently, Denmark saw cases of COVID skyrocket, and so did the number of deaths. Which is why we need to do things right for all of us, for our health workers, for our economy, and for our business owners who do not want to see more lockdowns. And the fact that a loud minority has an ideological opposition while being encouraged,
and then we'll go check it wherever. Like, I don't imagine to be anything going on there, but Jerry, thank you so much for that, Jerry.
seniors to be scared.
Thanks for standing up for freedom. That's to all our truckers and live streamers. Thank you, everybody. And thank you guys for watching, of course, and spreading it.
And also oblige business owners to continue the lockdown longer. And in fact, this occupation even reduced public order by overwhelming 911, which meant that Ottawa residents' right to safety and security was taken hostage. And of course, there were also heavy economic consequences and signs of foreign interference in orchestrating this illegal protest.
Heard. I clearly said 2, and if you check the records, you will.
I would like
if you
to
want
remind
to watch
us
the video,
that this
it's
pandemic
available.
is unfortunately not over,
just watch
that
it.
the
It's on
virus
film.
is the real
There's
enemy,
there's 2
and the best
individuals,
way to
including one
overcome it
lady
is to get
who's in a
vaccinated,
scooter
follow
or walker
science,
who
and
gets
work
trampled
together,
by a 2,000-pound horse.
as we have been
I
doing
have
from the
horses.
beginning,
Let me tell you,
instead
that's
of
going to hurt a
encouraging
whole
people who
lot.
wish to sow
And
division.
that happened. So you can shake your head all you want. Look at the video.
For 2 years,
secondly, I
our
went through it
government
blow by
has
blow by blow.
unprecedented
There is not a national
financial
security
assistance.
threat that cannot be resolved by other
This
legislation.
has
It is
helped to
clear. I
support
don't know how others
Canadians,
did
our
it.
businesses and organizations to help them get through this difficult
I
time.
just want to remind when we're
But
answering
because of the
questions, to come
occupation
through the
of Ottawa and
chair, make
elsewhere
sure
in
we don't
Canada,
take this so
some
personally.
businesses
I
had
know
to stay
it's
closed.
been late in the day, and we
People
all
have
have
lost
still
their jobs.
lots to say and
All
lots to
sectors are
comment
affected.
and question. L'honorable député.
The honourable member.
And the harm to
for
our
Jean-Pierre.
economy totals
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
millions
In
of
his
dollars.
speech, my colleague said that the government had put
It would be really regrettable if the efforts made by the government
partisanship before science.
to
He
fight the
said that by
consequences of
referring to the motion
COVID-19.
that the Conservatives
It would be
tabled,
really regrettable if they ultimately disappeared
with
due to the
regard
actions of a group of
what Dr.
protesters
Tam said, but I
who wish
heard
to
a
undermine the
number of,
democratic process in this
Conservative,
House.
colleagues
When I was in
said
university,
that
our
vaccination
professors were
was a
constantly
bit of a
telling us
problem,
that
whereas
what
science tells us to
legislators
get
do has real
vaccinated.
effects.
So perhaps my colleague can respond quickly. Is he
The Emergencies Act,
pro-vaccination?
which
Does
was
he
sponsored by a
agree
conservative
that
minister,
the best way to
was
emerge
adopted
from
in
this
order to be
crisis
used.
is by getting vaccinated? I'd like to hear
It's
what
a
he
good
has to
thing that
say
it
on
didn't have
that.
to be used over the last 34 years. Canada
Thank you
is a
very much.
peaceful
I'm sorry
country.
for, it must be the end of the day. I'm a
And
little passionate there,
Canadians
so I
are extremely
apologize to the member there if I got a little passionate.
There is an entire process to implement this
I am
act,
definitely
consulting the provinces
pro-vaccine.
and territories.
I am proudly
Hours of debate,
vaxxed, and I believe
vote,
everyone should be
and analysis
vaccinated.
by a committee.
However, we also need to give,
protège le
we
droit
need
de
to not demonize people who think differently than us. We live in a free country, and when we demonize, when we call people misogynists, when we call them racist, that is not Canadian. That is not our Canada.
Before the decision was made,
Commentaire, the
there were
honourable member
calls,
for Edmonton
consultations,
Strathcona.
meetings with the
Mr.
Mayor of
Speaker,
Ottawa, with the
and I
Ottawa
would like to
Police,
thank my
with
my
the
colleague
premiers
for
of the
his
provinces
intervention in the
territories.
House. I've worked
Over the last few
closely with
weeks,
him on the direction and
we have
control
felt
bill that I
a
know
shift.
he brought forward, and
Over the last few weeks,
I'm quite pleased with some of the
we
work
have
that
felt
he's done
the
in this
rise
House.
of something
One of the questions
that
that
is
I
not
have for
like
him,
us.
though, as we look for solutions to the crisis that is facing Canadians, is how we deal with
gives the
foreign
necessary
funding
tools to those
or
who are on the
illegal
ground,
funding of domestic
who are
terrorist
living with
groups.
the situation
And I'm just
head-on,
wondering whether or not he would
face-to-face with the
support
nastiness,
urgent legislation being put in
confrontation,
place to
and the
prevent
defamation.
Domestic terrorist groups from
It
being
allows the
funded.
government to mobilize its essential services. It allows the RCMP to act more quickly,
Thank the
to have
honourable member
local
for her
regulations
comment, and
complied
I've
with,
enjoyed working with her in
to
216.
stop
If I'm
money
not
from
being
circulating.
Too bold, enjoyed
These are
walking
targeted
with her
and temporary
to
measures.
the House earlier. But what I would say is this is an area of study, and it is an area where we need to look at these new
This
technologies.
weekend's operation could not have taken
Unfortunately,
place
our
without
government's
the
been
powers of the
behind
law.
on many things, including
The best example
reviewing
is
how
the towing companies.
cryptocurrency works
When
in
first
our
requested by
context.
Ottawa
We need
Police,
to look at
they
crowdfunding.
would not
We need to
come
review all of
and
this
tow
stuff.
the parked trucks.
Easy to back, continuing
Under
debate,
the Emergencies
member
Act,
for
they had to
Columbia.
comply with the Ottawa Police requests.
Mr. Speaker, the
And
government has
participate
cited a
in the
public order
dismantling
emergency
operation.
throughout Canada
And we
as
thank
a
them very much for
justification to invoke the Emergencies Act.
We were quite
They're
patient.
wrong. In this chamber, the
Reasonable
Prime Minister
and
said he
proportionate
invoked the
measures were
Emergencies
taken
Act
in
because the
cooperation
situation
with
could not
the
be dealt
provinces
with
and territories
under
to
any other
dismantle
law
the
in
occupation
Canada.
and
That is
unblock
false.
the
The
economy.
leader of the NDP talks about
We are
tools
sending a
available
clear
should
message
the government abuse
to
the
protect our
power
democracy,
provided within this act.
to
But he's
protect
missed a critical
everyone's
point. The abuse has
safety
already happened.
and
Neither of them
reinstate
are listening to
confidence in our
Canadians
institutions.
and are instead choosing a path
At 6
of
p.m.
divisive
this evening,
policies,
the acting chief of the
distinctively
police
separate
of Ottawa,
from
chief of police in
democracy
Ottawa,
and the
said
voice
that
of
despite
Canadians.
the successful operation
Mr.
over the last few days,
the freedom is the heart
it is
of
not, our
democracy,
city is
and the right
not
to choose
in its normal
is at the
state,
heart of
and
freedom.
that police measures must
Let me
be
say that
maintained
again. The right to choose is
to
at the heart of freedom.
avoid
And
the
freedom is
return
what
of the
so many
protesters.
hundreds of thousands of Canadian women
Madam
and men
Speaker, we
have
respect
paid
the right to
ultimate
protest
sacrifice to
and the
defend.
rule of law,
A
but
Métis
we
man in my
condemn
writing of
violence
Bruni
and
Columbia wrote me
lawlessness.
this week to tell me a story of his father's commitment,
protested.
his family's commitment to
We heard
preserving
them.
and securing democracy.
Now
and his
it is
concern
time for
about
them to
current
leave
government
downtown
actions.
Ottawa.
He told me the
Thank you,
story
Madam
of his
Speaker.
great-grandfather.
Comments, the Honourable Member for Calgary Shepherd.
He holds tightly as a reminder
Thank
of how
you,
he
Madam
came to be
Speaker.
freed that very
What I would
bullet
say
that tore through
to
his
begin with
great-grandfather's leg.
is that perhaps they
He
heard
also
them,
told me a story that
but
his
they didn't
grandfather,
listen to them.
his father,
I
grandfather
think
fought
it is
in the
important to
Canadian
admit
1st
that the
Infantry
government
Division
did
that
not
made its way
listen
through
to the
Italy
protesters
or
who
Tona
came here and
to stop
elsewhere,
Hitler's advances to Europe. These are but two
which
examples
they did very
of hundreds of
energetically, that
thousands
is
of
true.
Canadians who have
Now, I would like
sacrificed
to
for our
ask
freedom. The very freedom
the
this
honourable
government
member a
has
question.
restricted. Why did the Prime Minister go directly to invoking
In the private
emergency
sector,
act?
when people have
He had
consultations,
numerous opportunities to address the
it's
situation
to either to
peacefully
convince
over
the
past
other
few weeks,
people that
and yet
they're
chose to do nothing.
that you're
I can
right,
think of
or
four
that you
reasonable
want
actions that would have allowed us to avoid the difficulties we faced.
give
Prime Minister could have
present
sent a
arguments that you hope they will make sense
The
to
Prime
them.
Minister could have
When
sent the
the
Public Safety
Emergencies Act
Minister or the
in the
Emergency
Emergencies Act, it
Preparedness
says
Minister.
that the government has to
The Prime Minister
consult
could have met with
provinces.
opposition leaders like the Conservative
How
leader
can it be
requested.
that if
And
the government
finally,
did
the Prime
consult
Minister
the
could have
premiers
met
of the
and
various
listened to these
provinces, that
Canadians
7 out of 10
And of
premiers
course, the
following
government
the
could have
consultation
reviewed
left the meeting
COVID
and said
restriction
explicitly
vaccine
that they did
passports
not want
at
the
our border
Emergencies
crossings
Act
and
to be
airports.
used in our
But
country.
we know, Mr. Speaker,
L'honorable
that
secrétaire,
the one thing that
honourable
would have helped
parliamentary
de-escalate is the
Thank
very
you,
thing
Madam
he did not
Speaker,
do.
and I thank my colleague
Having
for
a
his
significant
question,
background in
and I
law
also thank him
enforcement,
for
the
having
basic
asked
rule
it
of
in
law
French, and
is
I
to listen to the
congratulate him for that
concerns
too.
and work towards a peaceful resolution, not to enter into a fight first.
You know, Canada
I
is
can't imagine
a
if
large
every police
country.
officer went to a
Situations
call and
vary
didn't
from
listen
one
to
place
the
to the
issues
next,
first.
and the
Dialogue is
Emergencies Act
significantly more productive than the Emergency Act. Instead, what he
contains a
decided to do
rigorous
was further
process,
ratchet
as I
up,
said in my speech,
escalate, and divide
for
Canadians
its own
with hurtful
implementation.
rhetoric. While
And that
Mr. Speaker,
process
Canadians aren't buying
does
the
indeed
visit-
include
the visit
consultations,
rhetoric.
and those
The
consultations
Prime
did
Minister
take
no
place.
longer has fully
Another
rooted in
advantage of
democracy,
the Act is
and all
that
members of this House have a simple choice
it
to make.
applies to
You
the
side
demand.
with
That
freedom of the
is to
institutions
say,
of democracy,
it would be
or you side
applied
with the Prime Minister and the leader of the
where
NDP.
there
who
was a
want
need to
seize
do that.
bank accounts of
So
Canadians
some
with whom they disagree.
provinces do wish
Apparently, accounts have already been
the
frozen.
law to be
So
applied
this sets a
in their
precedent
provinces, and
that
that's the
all
great thing about
illegal
that Act.
road,
It may
logging
be
sites,
used
pipeline
where it
blockades,
is
railroad
required.
blockades.
Thank
The
you,
future
Madam
funding
Speaker.
is subject to this
The
process.
honourable member.
Back to the Emergency Act, I choose freedom. Let us not be so foolish
The
as to
honourable
water
member
down the
presents the
significance of this
assent,
movement
Becca.
and our obligations
Thank
to
you,
those
Madam
we serve,
Speaker.
and the
I have
impacts
a-
this will have on generations
A
that
quick
follow.
question for
The
the
decisions we
parliamentary
make in this
secretary, and
chamber
I
on this
thank you
issue
for
will
I thank you for her
reverberate
speech.
through the walls of history,
One
and we
of
won't be
the
held to
elements
account.
in this arsenal,
The choice is simple.
which is the
Protect
Emergencies
and
Act,
defend democracy
is
or tear it
seizing
down.
bank
I, Mr.
accounts.
Speaker, will be
It's
voting
been
to defend.
discussed a great deal in the media. So it
We
would be
must not
up to
accept a
financial
situation where it's up
institutions
to a
and
Prime
banks
Minister or any member of the
to be
government
the
to
police.
decide, outside the laws created in
Essentially,
this chamber,
they'd have
which
to
protests are
self-regulate
legal
their own
and which
processes.
are not.
They have to identify
We
who
surely must not tolerate
participated
a scenario
in
where
the
families are
siege of
separated
Ottawa,
because of their ideas
and
or
then
beliefs
to
and are
investigate
different
enough
than
to
that of
find
the
out
Prime
whether or
Ministers or the
not
government of the day.
it,
Mr. Speaker, could
if a
Colombians
person
see this as
leaves
being
the
about the
siege,
Prime Minister's ego,
will
about
their
lack of
bank account
leadership,
then be
and wicked precedents?
released again?
Mr. Speaker, through you, I'd like to take this moment to
Because
speak to
how
those
does all
members
this
of the
work?
Liberal caucus who are feeling
Why is
uneasy
it up to
about
financial
being whipped to a
institutions
vote
to
they
police
know to be wrong.
their
Your
clients'
country
activities?
needs you
It
to
seems quite
uphold the
complicated
values of
to me.
democracy and freedom.
I will
Our country will be
ask the
strong and
parliamentary
free
secretary to
long
answer.
after we leave this
Thank
place.
you, Madam Speaker, and I
And it
thank
is
my
our
colleague for this
responsibility
question.
to ensure
Of
it
course,
is so.
these measures are
The Emergency
extraordinary.
Act was not
so
invoked during the fears and protests around the
that's what
Spanish
the law
that took
permits.
50 million lives around the world. It was not invoked during the Great
Giving
Depression and the
the
workers'
power
strikes in
to
the
financial
30s.
institutions
It
to
was not
conduct their
invoked
own
during the crisis of
investigations,
Polka
and they will
or
be
April
accompanied by
and it was not
the
invoked in the aftermath of 9/11.
RCMP in those undertakings.
During my time
We're
in law
talking
enforcement
about
in British Columbia, it was not invoked
76
to solve the riots
personal bank
in
accounts that
Penticton
were
and Kelowna,
frozen,
where downtown
as well as some
storefronts
corporate
were
accounts.
destroyed.
We can see,
And it was
therefore,
not
that
invoked to
the
address the
Act
month-long
is being
illegal
applied in a
standoff
very
at Justice Lake, one of the
circumscribed
largest
manner,
in the history of the province.
and the most
There were RCMP
worrisome
members shot,
accounts
helicopters
are
taking
being
rifle
targeted.
fire,
And I think
landowners
it is
unable to go
worrisome
home.
to
I was
discover
at
that
this
most
event
of
and can say
the
with certainty
money that
it was much like a war zone. In
poured
British
into
Columbia,
the
Canada, no
support
emergency
fund comes from
And currently
outside
there is an
the
illegal
country.
blockade
So
and protest
it is
at the
important to
Coastal
make those
Gas
links.
Link drill site on the Martin
The Honourable
Forestry
Member for
Road near
Louisville,
Houston,
Patrick.
BC.
Thank you,
On
Madam
February
Speaker. I'd
17th,
like
there was
to
an attack
thank
on a
the
number
Parliamentary
of
Protective
CGL employees
Services as well as
and
the interpreters
RCMP, and a member
who
physically
are
injured in the attack.
allowing us to have these debates
Initial damage to equipment
and
and
protecting
buildings is
us.
estimated over $10
Thank you
million.
to all of you. My
RCMP are
question
investigating mischief,
is,
assault, criminal
why
harassment,
did you wait
and
for
mad
3
treatment
weeks?
set purposely to injure
People
police.
came
Now,
from
this
thousands of
appears to
miles,
be a violent,
thousands of
illegal
kilometers
action
away.
that the
We
emergency
knew
efforts
they were
support law
coming.
enforcement,
They announced their
especially also
intention of
given
overthrowing the government if
the
they didn't get
financial
what they
support
wanted. They even threatened the Prime
GoFundMe.com
Minister.
has
They're
financing from outside
funded
Canada.
by foreign
Where the
sources.
other methods and authorities
So,
exist to
and
deal
yet the
with
federal
disagreement,
government allowed
should
the
use
situation
these
to deteriorate
methods and
to
authorities.
this point. Is
Government
this
should
not a
subject
failure on the
free
part of the
people
Liberal government?
to abuse of
Parliamentary
wide-ranging
Secretary?
freedom-altering overreach.